representation of his being. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. Everything that is true about God is represented to us in Jesus. In the Gospel of John, Philip at one point said to Jesus, he said, Jesus, show us the Father and that'll be enough for us. I love that. It's so understated. You know, show us God in heaven and that'll be enough. Like, is there any more? No. Show me God in heaven, that'll be enough for us. And so Jesus says, okay, I'll do that for you. See? Jesus says to Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Jesus himself claims that he is completely the communication of God the Father to humanity. 100%. Everything that is true about God is true for us through Jesus. Everything that is true about God we can see in Jesus. We can see through Jesus. He's the exact representation of his being. No one else is qualified to tell us about God. No one else is qualified to communicate to us truth about God because Jesus is the exact representation. Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 through 20 says this. He, Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him. He's before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he's the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Jesus is fully, completely, totally, 100% God in human form. Everything that you want to know about God is found in Jesus. He is the perfect, exact representation of all that God is. The next thing the author of Hebrews tells us is that Jesus has life-giving words. Here's the phrase. It says, sustaining all things by his powerful word. Of course, we just saw that in the book of Colossians. In Colossians, it says, in Jesus all things hold together. Now we see in Hebrews, it says that Jesus is sustaining all things by his powerful word. And so, here's the phrase for you. Jesus has life-giving words. I was trying to think of a good example for this, and I could come up with none better than John 11. Jesus has a close friend named Lazarus, and he's died. He's been sick for a while. They call Jesus to come. Jesus delays. He does not go. And then his buddy dies. After he dies, then Jesus starts walking. And when he finally gets to the town, he's surrounded by Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus. And they tell Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. If you had been here, you might have been able to prevent it. But Jesus isn't worried. He's not scared. He says, take me to the grave. Roll the stone away. No, Jesus, he's been dead for 4 days. He's beginning to smell. Jesus says, do I look like I don't know what I'm doing here? Did I stutter? Roll that stone away. Because he knows he's got some power in his words. Then he prays and he says, Father, I'm talking to you so that you know, so that the people around here know that you sent me. That we're together on this. I know that you hear me. I'm just letting them know you hear me. And then we read this. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Jesus has the power of life in his words. He can give life to a dead man. He can give life to you. He can give life to me. His words have power. And for 2 millennia, people have been receiving power from Jesus' words. Jesus is God's final word. No other words have the power that his do. 2 more. The next one we find in Hebrews is that Jesus solves the problem of sin. The phrase in Hebrews is this: after he provided purification for sins. And if then you keep looking, you'll see in 1 Peter 3:18 these words: for Christ died for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. We're going to talk about this next week in more detail. That the fact that Jesus provides purification for sins is one more reason why he's the final word for us. One more reason why he's the breath that we need. So since we're going to spend more time on it next week, I'm going to go ahead and move on past it this week, except just to say this. The fact that Jesus removes sin is absolutely essential for you and me to hear God speak. The Apostle Paul would tell us that the God of this age, by that he means maybe Satan, or maybe he just means in a metaphorical sense the spirit of this age, the world's thought processes, the perspective of this world. But the God of this age has darkened us, has blinded our eyes so that we cannot even see what God has for us. Unless God wipes away the clouds and darkness in our lives, we can't hear his voice. Jesus needs to remove sin in order for us to hear God speak. And here's the last thing the author of Hebrews tells us. It says, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty in heaven. Jesus sits at the right hand of the Father. Jesus is sitting at the right hand of the Father. You know what that means? That means he's got God's ear. He's got God's ear. Jesus is God fully, so he's got God's representation to us. He is God fully, so he can speak the words of God to us. But he's also sitting next to the Father, which means he's got the ear of the guy in charge totally and completely. And if you do something where you mess up, Jesus is like, oh, that's mine. He's mine. He belongs to me. You know, my son, my blood covered his sins, so he's cool. He's not heavy. He's my brother. This is Jesus. He's always there. We're even told in the Bible that Jesus intercedes for us to the Father in heaven.